Good afternoon, everyone. We had a wonderful morning, didn't we? Wasn't that just the best? Wow. When we think about social justice at Trinity, a couple of things come to mind. First of all, I said to a couple people on the break, you know, when you talk about DEI, Trinity is DEI. We live it every day. You know, we don't have special programs. It's what we do, actually. And that's important. And we live social justice, as someone pointed out earlier, in the work we do, in who we admit, in the way we do financial aid, in the way we do student support, and so forth. One of the opportunities that came to Trinity about 10 years ago was when our good institutional friend Donald Graham, former owner of the Washington Post, started an organization called TheDream.us. And TheDream.us is the largest scholarship benefactor for undocumented students in the country. They're supporting currently, I think, 3,000 or 4,000 undocumented students across the country. They support about 100 students here. And in addition to our Dream.us scholars, we also have other undocumented students who we support. In addition to undocumented immigrant students, we have a large number of other students who are immigrants with various stages of status. And immigration issues are extremely important to our community here at Trinity. We have immigrants from all over the world, large numbers from Central and South America, the Caribbean, and Africa in particular, and also other nations. This is a truly international campus in many ways. It's a campus that has a level of ethnic and national diversity that you wouldn't even believe. You have to start unpeeling it. I think there's 20 or 30 different languages that our students speak, representing 20 or 30 different countries in any given entering class. Obviously, because of who our students are, we are particularly concerned about the current issues with the immigration crisis in this nation. And we could not possibly have a program on social justice without considering the immigration issues from the Catholic Church's perspective, the role and position of the bishops, and also what we as Catholics should be doing every day to deal with what's going on in our communities. It's been especially frightful the last 2 or 3 months here in town with the ICE patrols all over town, with the National Guard, who are less threatening than they may seem at first, but the presence of ICE is very threatening, and we worry about it all the time. Some of our families have been victimized by the aggressive incursions. None of our students yet have been taken, but we worry about that all the time. We have put together a panel that is terrific, and it's being led by our own alumna, Rosa Reyes. Rosa, who is the director of our Dream Scholar Partnership with TheDream.us. Your class of 1921, listen to me, 2021. I'm dating myself. She's not that old. And she's wonderful. And we are pleased to have also friends from Todd Scribner from the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, Celia Rivas from Catholic Charities, and our 2 students who will be speaking and asking questions at the end. So, Rosa, I'm going to turn it over to you to go ahead and introduce and start the panel.
Yeah. Thank you, President McGuire. Good afternoon. How was lunch? Good? All right. Happy to hear that we all have a lot of energy after the break, the lunch, and just having here so many good points by any of the panelists before us. I am very, very pleased to welcome everyone to our panel today on immigration crisis and the imperative of social justice. We have some great speakers with us today. Todd Scribner from the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. We have also Celia Rivas from Catholic Charities, Immigration Services. And to my left, I have our very, very own super duper fantastic student leaders, Sayuro Cervantes Perez and Belki as well. So just like President McGuire has stated, this is a very important topic for us here at Trinity, not only for the Trinity leadership, but the faculty, the staff, and the students, right? And not only for Trinity, but also for myself in particular. A first-generation college graduate, a first-generation immigrant, and somebody that's also formerly undocumented. So the work that we do here at Trinity, it is very, very deeply personal to me, because I support students that stay in the same classrooms where 3 to 4 years ago I was undocumented like they are as well. So it's something that we're very passionate, and we try to do a lot of work with the students here at Trinity. Here at Trinity, I am the director of the DREAM partnership, so I work with all the students that have the DREAM.US scholarship and others that do not, but still fall in the category of not having a permanent status in the US. Just like President McGuire mentioned, the DREAM.US is the largest organization providing scholarship funds to undocumented students in the US. Over the past 10 years, the DREAM.US has provided over 10,000 scholarships to students that now have graduated with their bachelor's degrees across the country because of the financial support that they have been able to receive through the DREAM.US. And so it is through this partnership with Trinity that we currently have over 100 students receiving DREAM.US funds as well as Trinity funds to be able to obtain their bachelor's degrees. Thank you. These are students that work hard. These are part of not only like students here, but they're part of their communities. These are students that work and pay taxes. These are students that contribute back to the community, to not only the campus community, in like the academic knowledge and field, the academic body, but also these are students that have a lot of hopes and dreams of aspiring to become professionals ranging from, nursing, global affairs, communication, teachers, scientists, all of those professions, and they have lots of hopes and dreams of doing those things. So very important that we're going to speak on that today. So the support of the Catholic Church definitely means so much to our students, definitely in the face of so much stress and so many challenges. I think those have always been endured by our community, but now with the current administration, we're enduring those even more, sadly. But to share the work with us from the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, I am pleased to present Mr. Todd Scribner, who works with the Bishops Conference in Migration and Refugee Services. Welcome, Todd.
Can everyone hear me okay? Good, I'm going to stand for this. The nervous energy, I think I hide it pretty well, but it still kind of hits me before I speak publicly. Is that better?
Yep.
Excellent. So obviously this has been a challenging 10 months, 9 months. The rapidity and the aggressive nature with which the Trump administration has come at the issue of immigration through a lot of executive orders and other administrative actions has been a bit overwhelming. And it honestly, I think, has caught us on our back feet, sort of on our heels, even though we knew he was going to come in and not be friendly towards migrants. But a lot of organizations that work on behalf of migrants and for them and with them, were kind of on their heels. I mean, just every day there was a new executive order or a new executive action, and it made it very difficult to kind of become proactive. I think at this point now, we're kind of getting our feet under us, and we're starting to kind of evaluate where we are and how we can respond effectively to a lot of the actions that are taking place. I could spend an hour talking about them. But I'm going to just give 3 buckets, and I'm going to talk about really one specific issue under each bucket, just for the sake of time. The first bucket is humanitarian protection. The second bucket is the U.S.-Mexico border. And the third bucket is interior enforcement. Okay, under humanitarian protection, we could talk about the basic dissolution of the refugee resettlement program. We could talk about the way in which asylum has been effectively eliminated at the border, and the ability of people to pursue asylum, which is a legal right of individuals, basically does not happen by virtue of executive order anymore. We could talk about the elimination of the parole for various populations, in particular Nicaraguans, Cubans, Haitians, and Venezuelans. I want to talk about temporary protected status, though, a little bit. So temporary protected status is a program, or it's a policy that puts into place a protection for people who are typically here illegally in the United States, but they can't be returned to their country because of, political violence or some sort of a weather event, an earthquake, this sort of thing. If they were sent back, it'd be dangerous for them to do so. And so what we have now is basically the administration who is taking proactive steps to eliminate or discontinue temporary protective status for hundreds of thousands of people, from countries all over the world: Afghanistan, Cameroon, Haiti, Honduras, Nicaragua, Venezuela. That was ended over the summer. Haiti. People who have temporary protected status who are from Haiti, and it thinks that it's okay, the administration does, to remove that protected status and to send them back to that country, which is basically run by gangs at this point in time. Clearly, it is an untenable situation, but that's what they want to do. Now, when temporary protected status is removed, then you lose your authorization. You generally lose legal status, any sort of legal protections, and so it's operable that you can be deported to either your home country or a third country. The U.S.-Mexico border. One of the key things that the administration did early in the term was to transfer from the Interior Department to the Department of Defense about 109,000 acres along the border. Typically, the United States military cannot engage in police action or any sort of kind of enforcement mechanisms in the United States by virtue that they're the military and they're meant for overseas. But when the property was transferred from Interior to Defense, now they are allowed to actually basically function as a de facto police force in that area and to engage in immigration enforcement mechanisms. So they can deter immigrants or detain immigrants. They can basically function as an immigrant detention force. This is a very big change, and it's a very substantial implications to people who are living along the border who might be in unauthorized status. Internal enforcement. The thing that you can look at here, and this isn't really just about internal enforcement, but it's about enforcement writ large, is the big, beautiful bill, which was passed, the reconciliation bill over the summer. It appropriated about $170 billion to immigration enforcement. About $45 billion went to increasing detention capacity, up to about 125,000 beds, which is just shy of the amount of beds in the federal prison system overall. It increased the number, it basically provided funding to hire about 10,000 ICE agents who will be distributed across the country to engage in enforcement along those lines. So clearly an aggressive attempt to expand enforcement, to expand detention, and to expand deportation. And there's really three takeaways. I think that there's three kind of areas where this is intentional. First is to deter those who want to come to the United States. If you're in Honduras and you want to leave that country to come here for a new life, you look at what's happening, you don't want to come. Second is to make life as miserable as possible for people who are living in the United States illegally, and ideally compel them to self-deport. And third, this is all further exacerbated by the removal of humanitarian protections, which basically increases the number of people who are living here illegally in the first place, thus subject to detention and deportation. So it's kind of a depressing narrative right now, right? And in a homily, this preached on the solemnity of the Assumption of the Virgin Mary, Pope Leo declared that we live in a world where, quote, words and choices of death may seem to prevail, and that where human self-reliance prevails, where material comfort and a certain complacency dulls the conscience, the faith can grow cold. Then death enters in the form of resignation and complaint, of nostalgia and fear. Instead of letting the old world pass away, one clings to it still, seeking the help of the rich and the powerful, which often comes with contempt for the poor and the lowly. We talked about the signs of the times a little bit earlier on, and it sort of seems that the signs of the times that we are entering a new world. and that an old world is being left behind. And if that's so, if that's true, then it is time for the church to try and reevaluate where we're at, anticipate where we're going, and make some sense of how we can function in whatever new world emerges. This is a topic probably for a different conference, what that means in all its implication and in all its forms, and all the way it's going to affect our lives, not just immigrants, but everyone. But in the issue of immigration, I think that it has some implications. Political advocacy with Congress and with the administration has long been something, it's been kind of the bread and butter of the Bishops' Conference. From its early ages in the 1920s, the conference was at least partially formed as a way to have a public political presence in Washington, D.C., as a result of the federalization of laws that was taking place at that time. Policy was becoming more federalized in the early 20th century. And you had a lot of other organizations, non-Catholic organizations, that didn't really like the Catholic Church that much, establishing a presence in Washington, D.C. So the conference was established to be a counter, to work with Congress, to try and advocate and legislation and policy and so on and so forth. It's not really working that well now. And on immigration, just quite frankly, to be honest, it's hard to imagine that immigration reform is going to happen anytime soon. And it's going to be a constant struggle just to prevent bad legislation from moving forward. So that bread and butter is kind of it's a tough road to hoe. We still do it. We'll still do it. It's important to do it. We have to do it because people need us to do it. We need you to do it as well because we can't do it on our own. We're a national organization, but we need people on the ground to do it. But there are some sort of practical implications too. So if that's not going to work, what do we do as a church, right, in the face of this aggressive immigration engagement by the administration? Well, I think the first thing that we can do, and I'll give you a few suggestions. Number one, get local. It's really, really important to get local. If the national isn't going to be like kind of the way we go, we have to get local. And the church needs to get local, in a concrete and demonstrable way. And I suggest a few ways in which this can be done. The first is to demonstrate solidarity. Okay, we need to demonstrate solidarity with immigrant communities and immigrant families. We are probably in a situation which is the most anti-immigrant kind of milieu that we have been in 100 years. At the time, 100 years ago, the church, they built schools where you're sitting today, right? They built hospitals, they built parishes, they built all this kind of social service. Catholic Charities came into its own during this period as a way to be responsive to the needs of migrants, not just pastoral, but material. So we need to be creative in figuring out ways how the church can be demonstrating solidarity in a way that's parallel but different. Number two, we have to practice accompaniment, right? There are real people being hurt. There are families being torn apart. There are people being deported. There are communities that are being wrecked. And it's important to come up with creative ways of demonstrating accompaniment. I'd point to Bishop Pham in San Diego. He was the first bishop appointed by Pope Leo when he became Pope. He's engaged in this great little court accompaniment program that he's developed, and the diocese has developed there, which, they accompany migrants who are going to their court hearings, just to be there with them, to show that the church cares. The Archdiocese of LA has developed a family assistance program which provides groceries and other material needs to families that are affected by enforcement and are in fear of being maybe detained or deported, having their families. The Archdiocese of Pittsburgh works with an organization called Casa San Jose, which is a volunteer-centered emergency response organization. When there's an enforcement action that takes place, they get their volunteers to go to where that enforcement action takes place, and to kind of be there with the people, because if we're not there, migrants will remember. People who are, their families will remember, and they won't stick around. They'll leave the church because we weren't there when they needed us most. 3, ongoing formation education. Lots of Catholics disagree with us. It's important that we engage in really well-situated catechesis and education with Catholics on the issue of migration and Catholic teaching. Again, we're here in a place that does that on a daily basis. right? And universities need to be very much engaged and involved in this issue on a daily basis, holistically too. How does a Catholic moral teaching inform our lives as a whole, including migration, but in a holistic way so that we don't just kind of segment off different issues as though they're not sort of part of a big picture kind of thing, right? And 4, and I'll stop with this. I may make one more comment, but I'll stop soon after this. Is evangelization through prayer and public witness. This is another form of education, right? It's not about principles per se, but it's about going and having a procession, holding a vigil that's public and that sort of reveals one's faith to the world. I mean, because at the heart of the church is our relationship with God. It's not, that's really what matters. And if we can demonstrate that publicly and invite people to ask, what are you doing and why are you doing this? What is this vigil for? Who are you, what is this about? And invite them in to learn a little bit about why the church does what it does, on a pre-political level, because they're people that are being affected, and we're trying to reflect sort of the command of God, as we read in the scriptures, welcome the stranger, feed the hungry, clothe the naked, so on and so forth. If we can do that, we can really lead to conversion, and that's really where it starts. And finally, I said get local. I'm going to end with this, and I'm just going to be very, very brief. But we also can get international, right? If the national doesn't work, we can get local, and we can also get international. I mean, one of the things we can do is go to where migrants are. And I know that USAID had been slashed, Jesuit Refugee Services, their funding has been slashed, Catholic Relief Service, so on and so forth. But we can work with them. I mean, universities maybe can set up educational systems with Jesuit Refugee Service that has presence in resettlement camps all around the world, and maybe provide some sort of credentialization program to get people to kind of learn while they're in the camps and prepare them for life afterward. We can send interns maybe to work with CRS overseas in Africa, from schools, and universities around the country. I mean, these are kind of the small creative steps that can be taken to be responsive to the needs on the ground, and I would welcome any other ideas that you might have that are creative too, because we need help figuring them all out. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Todd. I asked the audience to hold any questions that they might have until after our next speaker. I have the pleasure of introducing Celia Rivas. I got to know a little bit more about who Celia is over lunch, and I can tell that she's very passionate about the work that she does over at Catholic Charities with their immigration services. And something that stood out to me when Cecilia and I were talking over lunch is that Cecilia shared how the current immigration, they're trying to basically shift the focus on what really is important, and everybody's focusing on sort of the detentions and the detention centers, but people are not focusing on the people that can actually legalize and change their status, and how the current administration is really very thoughtful in a way of shifting the focus to something that is reactive, right? Trying to focus on the ones that are being detained, the ones that are already in detention centers. And instead, we could be more proactive if we can focus our attention and really the people that could change their status, that can legalize through either immigration consultations through lawyers, or with the funding, we were speaking a little bit about that. So right now we're gonna hear from Cecilia Rivas, who does amazing work as a lawyer at Catholic Charities, overseeing their immigration services, and she's gonna speak to us a little bit about the wonderful work that she does. Cecilia?
Good afternoon. First of all, I would like to thank you for the invitation. I know that this is a tough time, very tough time for us, because I think we are receiving we are sharing the tears of every family who is coming for services to us. And what I can see is I'm seeing the other side of the coin. Okay, we are being, and as I was explaining to you, we are being concentrated too much and okay, just ICE operations, but the thing is we are not seeing the sufferings of people who come to us for the services. And this is a very tough time, and as I was talking to my supervisor, is the fact that we are seeing more humanitarian cases, like meaning victims of domestic violence, victims of human trafficking, and victims of crime. So, and those kind of cases really need like special attention. It's not just the legal aspect of the client. We are working together with many parishes. We are working with nuns, we are working with priests, because it is very difficult for us to be able to see how is that they are unbundling their, like the trauma situation, their stories, their sufferings, and leaving those wounds open. So, and as I was explaining, through my work with various parishes, I said the spiritual accompaniment for each one of practically of the members of the immigrant population is key. And something that I think maybe we didn't see it coming in the past, but it's a real need. It's a real need because the kind of cases that we are seeing are terrible. I have been with Catholic Charities since 1991. And I'm gonna just share with you the words that the priest who hired me told me, and I have been living that every day of my life. And he said to me, you need to seek Christ in the life of every person who comes through the door, and then the person who receives services from you also needs to seek Christ in the service that you provide. And I think it's like a daily, theme that I have in my mind, because I do not know what I'm gonna encounter every day of my work. So that's why our role as a Catholic Church is to be able to just enhance this, like the spiritual accompaniment that is needed in the life of every immigrant of this country. Because the fear is, like, I can tell you, I have clients who are permanent residents, clients who are even US citizens who are experiencing fear. And one of the things that we need to do is like minimize the fear by just explaining, no, you don't need to be afraid because you are already a US citizen, you are already a permanent resident, and even with people who are undocumented. So as we are working, and as I just share with you the work that we are doing, is I find that in periods of time where there's fear, we need to be the ones showing them the source of hope. And you can do that. By being proactive in a way, like, for example, if you help a person who is undocumented, just not doing like the know your rights, but also doing the know your options, then you are gonna, because every person or every family who came to me after we did the know your rights, for example, they said, it doesn't give us time to be able to, when ICE comes, ICE comes. We don't know what are our rights because we are like in a shocking situation. But if we work with the immigrant population to be able to see how many of them would be enabled to have a possibility to become legal, I think that would be a very good way for us to be able to just assist that family. And what I can tell you is, like, we came like maybe 5 years ago to Sacred Heart to be able to do a clinic, and 80% of the people were eligible to become legal. And then at this point, that parish has been hit very hard with the ICE operations, and I was talking to the pastor saying, why is that we didn't do anything before? Why? Because many of them have been victims of crime. They could have been eligible for a U visa. How many of them practically we are seeing that there is so much human trafficking? Many members who have crossed the border, okay, have been trafficked practically with the participation of the cartels, not just the smugglers, but the cartels. The majority of people who are being trafficked in like U.S. territory are eligible for T visa. So what are we doing? Why is that we are not having that proactive approach to what is happening now? So, and I see more and more people who have like possibilities of relief, or I think there is a way to be able to create a possibility of relief legally, and we are not approaching that, I think, that standard. So I think that's something that I just wanted to share with you, because I have a different perspective. I have been with Catholic Charities since 1991, and I can share with you that the trends and challenges. 1991, when I started, is when TPS passed, the first part of TPS passed. And I remember there were like over 200,000 Salvadorians applying for TPS. At the same time, we served like people from Lebanon, Liberia, and because at that time, Spanish Catholic Center let INS use our building. We were able to serve. But I always had in my mind, okay, there was one family member in the United States. How about the rest of the family? How about the kids? When is that those kids are going to be reunified with the families? I think that's something that has always concerned me. And I think I was right, because when TPS ended for Salvadorians, and then we had the DED program, and then the NACARA law, and then they became permanent residents. Okay, so we are talking about years, sometimes like 15, 20 years before they could reunify the family. And the biggest challenge for those periods is when you reunify the family. And I see that the greatest need that we have at this point for the immigrant population is mental health services and pastoral care. Because when you reunify the family, practically, it is very difficult for like kids to be able to just being able to live with their parents. And we had seen the challenges that they have had. There was a time when Montgomery County, my office is in Gettysburg, we had a psychologist on site. So every time that we were able to reunify the family, we sent them for like mental health services, because we knew that there was a need for healing. And I can tell you that I see now many of these kids who were reunified that I'm seeing, like yesterday, for example. We ended the day very late because we had a victim of domestic violence. And when we learned about the story, we learned that it was a girl who came through the border after like 12 years of family reunification. They had so many fights with the family that she ended up on the streets. Okay, and then it was like, she lived like so many episodes of domestic violence. This is like maybe the third episode of domestic violence. And what we are doing is practically, we are listening to the stories of every person. How was your life when your parents were not there? Many of them have been abused by relatives back home. We are not addressing those issues. When they come home, when they reunify, when families are reunified, we are not addressing the wounds. Okay, we are not addressing the wounds, and as a church, and that's what I keep telling pastors, we need to just introduce the newcomers so that you can work with them. Because if they don't heal their wounds, they will just practically, that family is not going to be completely happy after we reunify. We can do the legal work, and we think, okay, just this is a case over. But it's sad to be able to see the kids, like 10 years later or 5 years later, in a very tough situation. So I think that's something that we need to, this is a different perspective, but this is what I'm seeing, and this is my concern. Because the thing is, like, when you reunify a family, okay, there is a risk. There is a risk in the situation. They don't feel loved. Sometimes they have to live with like step parents. It's even worse, okay? And then at the end, where do we find them? We find them on the streets. What can a youngster find on the streets? There is a risk that they can be involved like, in drugs, they could be involved in gangs. So those are the kind of things like this government practically is challenging us, right? So I think I just want to share with you this because that's my concern. My concern is like we need, as a church, to be able to support like newcomers, and we need to support also people who are struggling and suffering so much due to the wounds that they have lived like by crossing the border. And I can tell you, from all the cases that I have handled, because I do a large array of cases, like family petitions, like employment visa petitions, we do humanitarian visas, we do like inadmissibility waivers, where practically for the inadmissibility waivers, what we need to show is what is the crisis that they have struggled. And I can tell you like over 60% of the people who have crossed the border have been sexually abused. So how we address these issues? So that's why I think I want to put this in your minds, because we need to help like the community. And in addition to that, now they have to struggle with all the issues of the ICE issues. So I think I would like to just share with you, because these are very tough times. Especially, I was talking to my supervisor yesterday, because I said, sometimes I tremble every day that I come, because I don't know what crisis I'm going to encounter in the life of each person. So we are living very tough times, because there's like an explosion. I can say, there is no other word that I can use. An explosion of of cases of victims of human trafficking and victims of crimes, and also domestic violence. So as we encounter the issue of like drug overdose, the drug consumption within families, that is impacting them, because we are seeing that there is a higher number of cases of domestic violence. So I think it's important for us, even like if there is like a spiritual accompaniment for them, as parishioners. I said, I was talking to, the other day they invited me to a dinner, and then I said, we need to have in parishes, we need to have groups of people. The only thing that they need to do is like pray with them, listen to them, or accompany them throughout the sufferings and struggles. So I think this is like an initiative that I think we need to start. And the accompaniment for the immigrant population is like a real need at this point, because of the fear on like the ICE operations, because of the experience that they have to open their wounds to being able to just practically, when we do a humanitarian case, what we are doing, we are opening up a wound, right? And how is that we are helping them heal those wounds? My office is, I'm in Gaithersburg, and we work closely with San Martin of Tours. San Martin of Tours has a family ministry where there are 2 nuns. So sometimes after the interview that we have with the client, we have to call like the emergency line. Sometimes like we call one of the nuns just for support, because the way that I can express the work that we are doing, there is no way that I can serve unless I have tissue paper, because the tears in the lives of each person during these days are practically something that we are encountering very often. So, thank you.
Thank you, Cecilia and Todd, for not only the excellent points that you have made in how us as a community can support one another, but thank you for the work that you do as well. So now we have a round of questions by the students. Belki.
Good afternoon. My question is for Todd Scribner. Pope Leo, like Pope Francis, has been very clear that caring for immigrants and refugees is an essential part of the work of the Catholic Church. Yet sadly, many Catholics seem to reject church teachings about immigrants and favor arrest and deportation. What can the American bishops do to persuade more Catholics to support church teachings on immigration?
$1 million question right there, huh? I mean, it's something we struggle with every day, is how do you reach Catholics who don't agree with the church's teaching on this issue? I think for y'all, when you're working with people, let me put it this way, a lot of it's going to come down to you, because you're the ones encountering the people on the ground, right? I mean, bishops can make statements, and they do, and they will go out and they'll talk to people, but a lot of it's going to come to you as well. And I'm not sidestepping the question, but a couple of things. Number one, whether it's the bishops or whether it's you, don't start with policy. As soon as you start with policy, you're going to lose the people who disagree with you in terms of the church. I mean, it's like a dead end. It's a conversation ender. It may be fun debating, but it's an ender. Secondly, I would say don't always assume that people who have expressed problems with immigration or critiques with immigration, that their concern or their fundamental issue is always about immigration. Immigrants have long been scapegoats for a lot of things, and sometimes they're struggling with sort of economic problems in their own home, or they're struggling with other issues that they may sort of use immigrants as a stand-in for the issues that they're facing. So kind of get to know them holistically as well, try to really get to a sense as to where are their points of concern, where are their disagreements, are they, wanting to deport X number of people, or what are their disagreements with the church concretely in a very clear way. And then thirdly, this really requires, a lot of education, not only of them, but also yourself. We have to all become really well educated on the immigration issue. You don't have to become policy experts, but you got to understand kind of some of the dynamics. And you also have to understand the church's teaching so that you can be an effective response when they put forward things that may not be true. And so I would say the bishops need to do this too, right? We need to respond in that same way to the people that we work with and we deal with and we engage on a regular basis.
What is the best way for Catholics to work in cooperation with the church to support immigrants? And are there specific ministries that you can tell us about?
Yeah, sure. So I think a couple of things. First, engage your Catholic charities. That's on your local level. They work obviously very closely with migrants. It gives you an opportunity to be very hands-on, supportive, volunteer work kind of things. If you're a student, you want to intern, we often take internships, interns at the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, so that's always an option as well in our migration office. And I would also just urge everyone, if you haven't done so already, is to go to the justiceforimmigrants.org website. So that's our campaign that was launched by the bishops in 2005 in pursuit of immigration reform and comprehensive immigration reform at the time. So it's sort of evolved some of the objectives, but it's really, you'll learn if you join our listserv there, you'll get a newsletter every 2 weeks, and it'll just keep you up to date on like what's happening policy-wise, new resources, new news items that have come out. It'll help to keep you educated on those kinds of issues. So it's justiceforimmigrants.org.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Next up, I invite Sayuri Cervantes Perez to share her questions.
Thank you. My questions are for Celia Rivas. Right now, people are being profiled, detained, and deported without regard for their rights. Some are even U.S. citizens, others hold green cards, and most are being stopped by ICE because of how they look or speak. What advice can you give us to deal with this constant threat that afflicts so many people who are taking care of families and communities?
I think what is important is the education piece is key. Because if you're a U.S. citizen, regardless of your legal status, you have constitutional rights. And I think it's important to be able to reiterate. We need to create like a plan of education, okay, within the immigrant community. It's very important to know their rights, but to know also their options, so that it's going to be like an antidote to what is happening now. I think if you know your rights, you know that you are going to be able to just defend your rights, okay? So that's something that we need to do. I am very, very proactive on education to the community. That's what I can tell you, because that's the only way that we are going to be able to just overcome these challenges that we are living now.
Follow-up questions. Are the pathways to citizenship worth pursuing? How safe are they right now? And is there any hope of a simpler citizenship process in the future?
Okay, what I can tell you is like, even though the situation seems so like dark, on the other hand, what I'm seeing is like cases are being processed very quickly. Like, for example, like we used to wait 5 years in an unlawful presence waiver. Now I'm getting approvals in a year and a half. So if there is a possibility of relief, that's why I always encourage people, if you have a possibility of relief, don't wait. Don't wait until you are going to be in the hands of ICE, just move it. But the thing is, like, we need to, that's what, talking about that, one of the critical issues for many members of the immigrant population is the financial piece. And I think as like parishes, we need to find donors, because sometimes we have families who are unable to afford immigration fees that are very high. So I think we need to work as a community, okay? It's not just the fact that we are gonna let just the undocumented population battle by themselves. If we are legal and we are able to just support them, let's go ahead and support their efforts. If you know of a situation for someone who is undocumented, see whether you are going to be able to just refer them to just Catholic Charities or any other organization within the like wherever they are, to be able to see a possibility of relief. That's very important. Accompany them, okay? Accompany them during these times. Pray with them. Because the thing is that we have so many ministries at this point within the parishes. We need to ask them to be able to pray for the immigrant population. Prayer is powerful. And one of the, I'm so glad to be able to share with you that there are so many, very active parishes who have, like for example, in San Martin, due to our just constant push, they have, the first Friday that is devoted to, especially to the immigrant population, where they have the exposition of the Blessed Sacrament. And that has been practically a gift from God for many people. And I'm seeing other initiatives in other parishes where there is exposition of the Blessed Sacrament, during the month of October, I think even a whole night exposition of the Blessed Sacrament, because that's practically I think what I'm seeing is that is the nutrition fact that they are receiving to be able to minimize the fear.
Definitely. It gives them hope, just like you mentioned earlier before. And that's something that I think we all want to always remind ourselves, because it's very hard to keep that hope alive. It does not matter if you're an immigrant yourself, but just with the current situation, everything happening, it's very, very difficult to keep hope. But there's always hope, and hope looks different for everybody. So I want to open it up for questions from the audience. What questions do you guys have for any of us?
I'm wondering if anybody else finds himself in the situation I'm in. The young man who does my yard work, who has done it for years, has a helper. Christian has become very good friends with my husband and I. He calls us Grandma and Grandpa. I wonder why, but he does. He's a student at Montgomery College. Whenever he has difficulty, I don't want to say but whenever he has difficulty with his tuition for the classes he's taking in mechanics, we step in. I'm happy to do that. You're talking about what the church is doing as an individual. I find myself with this young man almost encouraging him to think about going back to El Salvador. El Salvador is having some good times. They've just opened a brand new airport. There are Americans who are moving there. He does not have problems with his family. His parents are all there. I said, he speaks beautiful English, that you would never think that this is a young man who could. So I'm feeling like he almost has an advantage if he goes back. Two of his friends have been picked up on the street and deported. I don't want that to happen to him, because he's in a worse situation if he gets picked up and is deported. Am I right in helping him to think that maybe he should just think of going back, because he might have a better life there than worry here that any minute someone's going to knock on the door and deport him? He feels safe in my house because he doesn't think anyone's going to drive up and pick him up, which they're not. But am I doing the right thing? You understand the situation I'm in?
Well,
I can't speak. This is what the church should say. What should I say to this young man?
Well, what we are doing is we are letting people make a decision about what is best for them. And the thing, I think that's important, to be able to let them know. And the problem, even though El Salvador might seem to be that things have improved, one of the complaints that we are hearing from El Salvador that there is lack of employment. Lack of employment. The unemployment rate is very high. So, and that's why people are not going back completely, because the thing is the situation of the crime is under control at this point. But one of the problems is the lack of jobs for people. So I think what we are doing is we are letting people have a safety plan, letting people have the plan A and plan B. If you are picked up by ICE, what are the decisions that you need to make, and what are the consequences if you decide to leave. Because the problem is that whenever a person has been unlawfully present for over a year in the United States, if the person leaves the country, the person is going to trigger a bar for 10 years. It's not going to be able to come back unless there is a waiver. So those are the legal aspects that we need to take into account prior to letting someone just go and leave. But if the person is picked up by ICE, they have the option, and they have no other possibility of relief. They have the option to be able to request voluntary departure, or they can leave voluntarily.
But you don't find yourself encouraging a person, like in this case, this young man speaks beautiful English, has a little bit more of an education, he could become a mechanic, that things might be good for him there?
Not necessarily, because the thing, it would be important to be able to know, to have the plan, because sometimes you always see the grass on the other side green, but you don't know the reality. One thing is to go to El Salvador as a tourist, and the other thing is to be able to go and live. That's one of the biggest problems that I think we are having in many of the Latin American countries, unfortunately.
Yes, I had a question, really. I bless all your work, all the work that you're doing. It's wonderful. It's needed. I have a brother also heavily involved in trying to document undocumented immigrants and stuff like that. But what I haven't heard today is the strategic, the higher level work that's going on. What is the Catholic Church really doing on a larger sort of Christian level? Sort of like the Vatican councils of getting, if this is God's mandate to treat all of our neighbors with love, it should be something, at least there should be some parts of unity within all Christian religions. And what is that? In addition to the grassroots things, what are we doing on the higher level strategic part to be able to fight a very large government response at this point?
Yeah, perhaps Todd, do you want to take that question?
Yeah, sure. In terms of our interfaith work and our ecumenical work, we're very closely engaged with other religious traditions. There's the Interfaith Immigration Coalition that we're involved with. It's a coalition of a variety of religions, Christian and otherwise, who come together to try and plan strategies, advocacy and otherwise, to work on behalf and with migrants to kind of respond to these issues. So that's just one example. We've partnered with the evangelicals recently. We partnered through RCUSA, which was the refugee resettlement kind of coalition, with LIRS and Church World Service and some of the other kind of religious traditions that were involved, kind of to do strategy and advocacy work. We're doing quite a bit of engagement on the interreligious and ecumenical work side of things for this kind of purpose. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, sure. No, I appreciate that. It's a communications problem, perhaps. A larger PR campaign issue that we haven't maybe gotten that word as effective as we can. It's something to work on. We'll try to do it. The things are going on behind the scenes, I guess. We do try to get word out. It's really tough to get through the noise, and to kind of get the visibility that we want from kind of non-religious organizations or religious news media, like CBS, NBC, CNN, whatever it is, to try and get that kind of high-level media exposure that will make it clear what we're doing. But yeah, it's, I appreciate your point, and it's something to work on.
What other questions do we have?
Hi, y'all. So I'm a student here at Trinity, and I know you mentioned you have internships at the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, but I was wondering if there was any resources or any ways for us students to help, because I know the immigration crisis may not affect me directly, but that doesn't mean I don't see its impact on my classmates and my friends. Is there any way, resources for us, other students, to help out, get involved or anything?
Yep, excellent question.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a very important question. Again, I think that getting volunteering is an important component of what you can do. We've talked a little bit about that, with Catholic Charities and local organizations that work with migrants. It is important to get politically active. I mean, even though I talked a little bit about how advocacy is kind of stalled right now in terms of actually achieving, if you can make your voice heard in an effective way, it's going to increase the pressure among your political leadership to be responsive. So, try and find ways in which you can do letter writing campaigns, where you can do letters to the editor, where you can, and newspapers, where you can do direct outreach to your, political leadership that you have, and get your friends and, your classmates to do that as well. The more of you that can do that sort of thing, the better. And I say get educated on the issue so you can talk about it. In ways that, that will be more effective when these conversations emerge. You can join the justiceforimmigrants.org listserv, really. Reach out to me. We can put you into contact with people who you might be able to be interested in sort of engaging. And it's these I think small steps really help to kind of get your feet wet, and they kind of slowly morph into bigger things that you don't expect early, when you first start engaged on these issues.
If I may add a little bit to the answer on that, I think the education piece that both Cecilia and Todd have already mentioned, it's really big, especially for you. It's very difficult to continue to, as somebody that is impacted, to continue to have to educate others on what is affecting you. I think if people take more accountability on educating themselves, it would be something that is very, very helpful. And then advocating as well, because it's very hard to be impacted, having to educate others and have to advocate while you're being impacted at the same time. So just the education piece of just learning about this, and I know something that Cecilia even brought up, and I've seen it, firsthand, is a lot of the times people don't know that they can even qualify for certain immigration statuses or reliefs. And just educating yourself and others and helping others say, hey, look, I found this, particular organizations that give free immigration clinics, for example. Would you like to go? Should we make an appointment? Maybe you need to do a screening, because a lot of the times people have gone through a lot of things. Like Cecilia mentioned, they have been sexually assaulted at the border. That can literally get you a type of visa, an immigration relief for that, but they don't know that a lot of the things that they've gone through, or even the timing on things or the age on things, they don't know that they actually qualify to adjust their statuses. But just educating yourself and educating others on this sort of things and advocating, the education itself is a huge piece on the advocacy that you can help your friends with and classmates.
Okay. No. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, the entire panel. Thank you. But this question is for Ms. Rivas. I would like to know, can you all hear me? Yeah, I'm sorry. Do you all, in terms of the traumas and different things that's happening with the constituents that you all are seeing coming through your particular organization, do you feel that the Catholic Church is equipped to handle those type of cases?
Health services, unfortunately, there is a crisis at all levels, because there are some programs even within the Catholic Church, like the St. Jerome services, that practically they have a great backlog. So this is really a crisis. I was talking to some pastors, and then I say maybe there is a need to be able to place a call for like mental health service providers who are Catholic within all the parishes, because there is a great need. I can tell you that sometimes I have cases that victims of domestic violence that have not been able to just file the case because we have not been able to find the necessary mental health services needed, even with the government. Because the government, certain places are putting restrictions, like time restrictions, and we are not able to address the mental health needs. So there is that would be a contribution, especially for many of the cases that we have to wait until we are able to find mental health services. But I think in addition to mental health services, I always have the two-pronged approach, mental health services and the pastoral care. It's important in every one of those cases.
What a wonderful group. And Rosa, I'm going to count on you and the students to follow up with our student about how we can engage even on campus. Maybe we should do a program for our students who are not in TheDream, who want to help and be in solidarity. That might be a good thing to do, right? So thank you. That's a great question. Thank you so much, and I encourage you to continue this conversation informally.